You wake up on Christmas morning to find a brand new game console under the Christmas tree. Or maybe you unwrap one for your birthday. You could have saved up your money to purchase the latest big game, or perhaps you simply walked in to browse what was in stock. Regardless of where you shop or how you purchase games, game stores have been the ultimate destination for gamers for decades now. While you might have a favorite mom and pop store, or maybe you just shop online, there's no denying that GameStop is the biggest video game retailer in North America. Through acquisitions or simply outperforming their competition, no other video game retailer has quite the retail footprint or legacy as GameStop. But how did GameStop become such a massive retailer? What practices did the company put to use? And who were the people behind these business decisions? For this holiday season, we're taking a look at gaming's most divisive retailer and how they shaped the way we all play games. Everything has a story. This is the story of GameStop. In this video, we'll be taking a look at GameStop's beginnings, their rise to power, and their ultimate fall as the video game market transitions from physical media to digital downloads, subscription services, and streaming platforms. The company that became known as GameStop wouldn't appear in name until the late 1990s, but the roots of the company go back to the mid-80s. In 1983, businessmen James McCurry and Gary Cusin founded a small software retailer in Dallas, Texas known as Babbage's. Named after famed mathematician Charles Babbage, the startup received some big help from notable people like Texas businessman and future presidential candidate Ross Perot. Despite the North American video game crash of 1983, Babbage's proved to be successful, selling Atari 2600 games and computer software when it opened. The retailer expanded to 5 locations by the end of 1983 and continued to expand through the 1980s. By 1987, the company began selling Nintendo games for the popular Nintendo Entertainment System. In 1988, the company went public and added over 50 new locations. At the start of 1990, Babbage's expanded to a total of 160 stores across America. Babbage's wasn't the only retailer specializing in video games in the late 80s and early 90s. While video games and computer software was becoming more popular, so was Babbage's competition. Due to declining sales, Babbage's sought a merger with another company. In 1994, Babbage's merged with Software Etc., a software retailer based in the American Midwest. The new holding company for the two retailers was named NeoStar Retailer Group. At the time of the merger, Babbage's had 335 stores, and Software Etc. had 380. Babbage's and Software Etc. remained their own separate entities until 1996, when the two retailers were merged after continued declining sales. Competition from department stores was eating up their business, and adding new locations was no longer enough to promote growth. By the end of 1996, NeoStar Retail filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The software retailer was in dire straits. With management unable to properly revive the company, the assets owned by NeoStar were sold to an investment group led by Leonard Riggio, the executive chairman of the monolith bookstore Barnes & Noble. Riggio wasn't the only party interested in the chain of stores. Electronics Boutique, a Pennsylvania-based video game retail chain, was also interested in the company. However, Riggio won out after a judge approved his bid over Electronics Boutique. Riggio's plan kept more stores open than Electronics Boutique, but 200 stores were still closed across the country after the buyout. Riggio bought NeoStar for a total of $58.5 million and dissolved the former holdings company. The name of the two chains were combined to create Babbage's Etc. With their new name in tow, Babbage's Etc. was revitalized with new management and a stronger economy. But both of these retailers weren't long for the market. In 1999, Babbage's Etc. launched 30 brand new stores in strip malls across America. These locations weren't Babbage's or Software Etc. They were under a new name for the company, GameStop. 1999 saw more than the birth of GameStop as a retailer. That same year, GameStop.com launched among the boom of websites during the dot-com bubble. Babbage's Etc. was financially successful once again, and Riggio's investment group was ready to make a sale. In October of 1999, Barnes & Noble bought Babbage's Etc. for $215 million. 9 months later, Barnes & Noble purchased Funcoland, a Midwestern-based video game chain, for $161 million. Babbage's was made a subsidiary of Funko. Funko's purchase brought two major features of the modern-day GameStop to the company. Funko owned the video game magazine Game Informer, and, more importantly, Funko specialized in buying, selling, and trading used video games. By the end of 2000, Babbage's, Software Etc., and Funko all combined into a single company. It was now known as GameStop Incorporated. Thanks in part to the launch of new systems like Sony's PlayStation 2, the video game market exploded in popularity during the early 2000s. In 2000, GameStop began offering its own version of buying, selling, and trading used video games. Funko stores were also rebranded under the GameStop banner. GameStop locations proved to be a huge success, with the retailer having more than 1,000 stores by the end of 2001. GameStop's success prompted Barnes & Noble to take the subsidiary public as its own independent company in 2002. A third of the company was put up on the New York Stock Exchange in February of that year, with Barnes & Noble continuing to hold a controlling interest in the company. 2002 and 2003 saw hundreds of new GameStop locations flood the market, and by 2004, almost all stores owned by the partially independent retailer were under the GameStop name. 2004 marked an important shift for GameStop. After being purchased only 5 years earlier, Barnes & Noble dissolved their stock of GameStop to Barnes & Noble shareholders. GameStop was an independent company, and it couldn't have come at a better time. The Nintendo DS, and the start of a new generation of gaming, was launching in late 2004, and it would usher in an entirely new crowd of gamers. Newly independent, GameStop began making efforts to follow in Barnes & Noble's success. In 2004, GameStop launched MovieStop. The new chain functioned in the same way as GameStop, buying, selling, or trading in used movies. MovieStop was never a large success for the company, with only around 40 locations ever opened, many of them in the same general area or attached to a GameStop store. GameStop sold off the rights to MovieStop to private owners in 2012, before the locations were shuttered completely in 2016. GameStop started making acquisitions early as an independent venture. In April of 2005, former rival Electronics Boutique, now known as EB Games, was the first of their many purchases. Sold for almost $1.5 billion, EB Games locations quickly became GameStops. In addition, GameStop was now a multinational corporation, having expanded into Europe, Canada, and other countries. GameStop was slowly growing into the biggest video game retail store in the world. In 2007, GameStop gobbled up Rhino Games, the southern US-based retailer owned and operated by Blockbuster. It purchased two more chains in 2008. GameStop purchased Free Record Shop in April, giving the company almost 50 locations in Norway. Micromania was purchased next for a total of $700 million and established GameStop's foothold in France. In 2005, GameStop held midnight launch events nationwide for the release of the Xbox 360 at over 1,600 stores. The following year, the Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 3 finalized the lineup for the next console war, and GameStop was the battlefield. An influx of new games caused GameStop's share price to skyrocket. Launching at $9.95 per share in 2002, GameStop shares hit $28.33 in December of 2006. 1 year later, the stock price was $61.45, over 2 times larger. This marked the peak of GameStop's stock price. Since then, GameStop's stock price has never exceeded $60 per share. My first experiences with GameStop came during this time as well. Having grown up in a rural town, my only options for purchasing video games came from our local Walmart or Kmart. In 2006, a Rhino Video Games opened up in a new shopping center. I was just starting to become accustomed to gaming culture, and Rhino Games gave me an outlet to finally see new games that I was hearing about. Within a year, Rhino Games became GameStop. GameStop quickly made an impact for both me and my friends. In 2007, I pre-ordered my first games with the store, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. They weren't the first games I ever pre-ordered. In 2005, I dealt with the annoying system in place at Walmart. But GameStop's promotion was too good to pass up, and I knew I wanted to play the games as soon as possible. I went to GameStop early one Sunday morning to purchase the games. I even saw my cousin who was also picking up the new games. For the first time in my life, purchasing a new game felt like an event to me. Later that year, GameStop became my go-to to see if Nintendo's Wiis were in stock. I knew I had to get one, and GameStop was my best option. Thankfully, my parents managed to get me one for Christmas that year, alongside an Edge card that earned me a few bucks off of used games and a subscription to GameStop's magazine, Game Informer. By 2008, I was picking up brand new games and classics from GameStop whenever I could. But GameStop as a company was starting to suffer. The Great Recession began causing GameStop's stock price to plummet as gamers had less money to spend on non-essential goods. Despite the economy, GameStop was well positioned to continue their expanse. In 2010, video game retailer Game Crazy, GameStop's last competitor in the used game market, was gone, having liquidated their stock that year. This gave GameStop a near monopoly in the used game market. With no debt and cash on hand, GameStop entered the 2010s in a favorable position. It became the de facto video game retailer in North America. Being the biggest video game retailer in the industry wasn't always positive. Competitors in the retail world began eyeing GameStop's monopoly on used game sales. Best Buy, Walmart, Toys R Us, and Amazon all launched their own used sale programs similar to GameStop's. GameStop also earned the ire of video game publishers. With the recession hammering businesses, video game publishers claimed that GameStop's reselling of their games caused game publishers to lose money. Worst of all, in 2009, GameStop faced a scandal involving their own customers. GameStop's checkout policy allowed employees to take new games home, try them out, and then return them to the store to be sold at the new price. Similarly, opened copies of games for display would also be sold at new prices, despite the seal being broken like the used titles they sold. This controversial practice continued all the way up until 2020, when GameStop officially ended the practice of selling opened games at new prices. GameStop continued its spree of acquisitions in 2009, when it purchased a majority stake in Jolt, a web browser game developer based in Ireland. The company bought Congregate as well, a similar browser-based company. Furthering their expansion into digital gaming, Spawn Labs and Impulse were purchased in 2011. GameStop wasn't settling for video game retail anymore. GameStop's retail footprint didn't stop there. In 2012, GameStop purchased the website Buy Mytronics to expand their used sale footprint online. In 2013, GameStop purchased Simply Mac and Spring Mobile, with the former being an Apple reseller and the latter being a retailer of AT&T products. All of this occurred alongside GameStop's own expansion, with hundreds of new locations across the world. GameStop brought new innovations to their customers as well. Launching in 2010, GameStop started PowerUp Rewards, an in-store membership service. The new program was free and offered points for purchases and trade-ins made at GameStop. GameStop also included a premium tier. The premium tier, known as PowerUp Rewards, was $15 a year. Like GameStop's Edge card before it, gamers received an additional 10% off used video game sales and 10% more trade-in credit for their used games. This came along a subscription to Game Informer. The new program saw millions of new customers. In turn, it helped Game Informer rise to be the third largest magazine in the US and the #1 video game magazine in the world in 2011. After a summer of low sales in 2012, the announcement of new game consoles from Sony and Microsoft renewed interest in GameStop once again. Just like the start of the last generation of gaming, GameStop's stock price quickly rose in anticipation of the new systems releasing. By November of 2013, GameStop's stock price hit its high point for the 2010s, and GameStop was reliving their glory days like the recession never hit. While the 7th generation of home consoles established GameStop as the leader in video game retail, it also housed GameStop's biggest downfall. All of the home consoles of the 7th generation offered digital downloads, the bane of GameStop's used media empire. GameStop began shifting in the early 2010s to mitigate their losses. GameStop locations began carrying more items that didn't fall precisely into the video games category. To go alongside their recent purchases of Spring Mobile and Simply Mac, GameStop stores began accepting trade-ins of cell phones and tablets, while selling these same items in addition to prepaid phones. The launch of the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 helped put GameStop on top, but their online stores would once again hurt GameStop more than it helped. And the addition of cellular devices didn't bring in the new customers GameStop wanted. By 2014, GameStop was shifting their focus again. Following hobbyist retailers like Hot Topic, GameStop shifted to merchandise and collectibles for an increase in their revenue. GameStop stores started carrying a wide variety of t-shirts, figures, trading cards, and more. And in June of 2015, GameStop purchased ThinkGeek.com for $140 million, increasing their commitment to merchandise and collectibles. GameStop's downfall, however, was just beginning. GameStop stock peaked once again in October of 2015 before dipping down to historic lows in 2016. To combat this, GameStop opened a new division called GameTrust Games as a publisher for independent titles. GameTrust's first release was Song of the Deep from Insomniac Games. Next, GameStop looked to its past and began offering trade-ins for retro video games. Games as far back as the 1980s could be traded in at any local GameStop. These titles would unfortunately be reserved only for their online store. There, GameStop sold games for almost every major system, breathing a little life back into the online game collecting scene. While these new ideas helped keep GameStop steady, it wasn't improving their situation. The release of the Nintendo Switch in March of 2017 did little to help GameStop. The announcement of Xbox Game Pass seriously dented GameStop when it was announced just a month before then. The new subscription service allowed players to download games from a pre-selected catalog of titles, including some games on the day they release. GameStop tried to combat this by offering a new service called Power Pass. For $60, gamers could check out up to 6 games at a time from a local GameStop for a window of 6 months. The program was shut down by the end of the year. In 2017 alone, GameStop closed more than 150 locations and saw its stock drop to near record lows. Adding to all of this was a publicity scandal regarding GameStop's Circle of Life policy. The policy rated employees based on their percentage of sales in 4 categories: pre-orders, rewards cards, used games, and trade-ins. Most surprising of all was a total lack of new game sales, which incentivized employees to push for used products, sometimes to the degree of lying to customers to make a sale. GameStop revised their program later that year to affect the stores overall, as opposed to targeting their individual employees. 2018 saw GameStop's fortunes continue to decline. Paul Raines, the CEO of GameStop since 2010, announced his resignation due to medical reasons in January of that year. His replacement, Michael Mahler, resigned only a few months later in May due to personal reasons. Following Mahler's resignation, GameStop began to look for a buyer. Investment groups showed some interest in the company, but this proved to be unfruitful. In January of 2019, GameStop gave up their hopes of finding a buyer and saw their stock plummet even further. GameStop began making layoffs in the summer of 2019. Over 170 people were laid off between July and August of that year, from positions like regional and district managers to staffers of its subsidiary Game Informer. By this point, GameStop's stock price sold for around $3.50 a share. The gaming giant was falling, and it seemed like GameStop's future was sealed. Today, GameStop is holding its head above water, but just barely. 2020 has caused a lot of disturbances to the economy, but GameStop seems to be handling it well. With stay-at-home orders across the world, GameStop saw a resurgence in popularity as customers flocked to their stores in an attempt to find some entertainment during these trying times. This wasn't without controversy, however. During the initial shutdowns in the United States, GameStop deemed itself an essential business and kept its stores open at the risk of their employees' health. GameStop relented in March of 2020 and shut their stores down to the public. GameStop continues to try and revitalize itself. In March of 2020, GameStop named 3 new board members, including former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé. The turnaround effort has seen some success as GameStop sees its fortune rise alongside a new generation of consoles. However, GameStop continues to close locations. In 2020 alone, 400 to 450 GameStop stores were shut down. The rest were re-merchandised to only showcase the best-selling titles, leaving stores feeling empty. That's the GameStop of today. Half video game and pop culture merchandise, and half games. Much like Barnes & Noble, GameStop's ascension to the top was stopped by e-commerce and their own overexpansion. The future of the company doesn't look too bright, as their biggest advantages haven't been decisions that they've made recently. If GameStop doesn't begin to make changes, it won't be able to survive the eventual crash that has occurred to them after the excitement of new systems wear off. The future of GameStop, however, could be a bright one. With additional downsizing and a focus on retro games and collectibles, GameStop could fill the niche that so many towns and cities need. Hobbyist stores will continue to be popular, but if GameStop wants to stay relevant, they need to get back to their roots: buying, selling, and trading used video games. Thanks for watching the Story of GameStop. I hope this video comes to you at a time when you're happy and well. 2020 has been a hectic year for everyone, and I hope my videos provided you all with a little bit of entertainment during the past few months. Subscribe if you liked the video, give it a like, and share it on your favorite social media sites. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts on GameStop, or maybe just a favorite holiday memory regarding video games. 2021 is just around the corner, and I hope to continue making content for all of you. So, as always, thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching.